Welcome to the King Performing Arts Center. It's a pleasure to have you all with us on this wonderful evening.
Pastor Kuhn has worked incredibly hard. You're going to see some very talented performers tonight. And as per usual, I'm sure you already heard all the things you need to know when you entered in, but no food, only water. And please keep the phones out for the performance. And we all hope you enjoy the importance of being earnest. Thank you.
Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
That's a shame. I don't play very well, but I play with a wonderful expression. As far as piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I prefer to keep sciences for life.
Of course, sir.
And, on the topic of sciences of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches prepared for Aunt Augusta?
Yes. Here they are, sir.
Lovely. By the way, Lane, I happened to check the records from Thursday night's party, and it came to my attention that an entire 8 bottles of champagne were consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint, drunk completely by the servants.
Why is it that the moment a man is single, the servants think it right to drink all of the champagne? I am merely curious.
I believe it is due to the superior quality of the drink, sir. I have often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely good.
Good heavens! Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it as a very pleasant state, sir. I have very little experience of it myself currently. I have only been married once, and that was the result of a late night, too much wine, and a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
Pardon me, Lane, but I don't recall being much interested in your family life.
No, sir. My family is not a very important subject at all. In fact, I never think about them myself.
Very natural.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower classes don't set a good example for us, then what on earth is the purpose of that? They seem to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Ernest, my good fellow, what brings you to town?
Amusement and pleasure, amusement and pleasure. Why, should anyone go anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algernon.
I believe it is customary amongst high society to enjoy some slight refreshments around 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What do you do in the country?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who do you amuse?
Oh, neighbors, neighbors.
You got nice neighbors in your part of the country?
Perfectly horrid. I never speak to any of them.
How intensely you must amuse them.
Naturally. Wait, what place? Why the cucumber sandwiches? Why such extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, only Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't be too pleased to see you here.
May I ask why?
My good fellow, the way you flirt with her daughter Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's nearly as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with her, and I have come up from town with the sole purpose of proposing to her.
I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. Why, I admit it is very natural and romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about the act of proposing. Why, there's a chance it may be accepted. One usually is, I suppose. And then, all of the excitement is gone. The very essence of romance comes from the uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try my best to forget that.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce court was specifically invented for those whose memories were so curiously constituted.
Oh, there is no use thinking of that. Divorces are made in heaven. Please do not touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered for Aunt Augusta specifically.
Well, you have been eating them the entire time.
That is quite different. I am family. How about you have some bread and butter instead? The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
You need not eat as if you were going to eat it all. You act as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her, and I doubt you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, the women never marry the men they flirt with. They don't think it right.
That's nonsense.
It is a great truth, and it accounts for the extraordinary amount of single men one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My good fellow, Gwendolyn is my cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you must clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Lane!
You called me, sir?
Fetch me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing forgot the last time he was here.
Right away, sir.
My cigarette case? But you had it this entire time, but I've been looking for it everywhere. I was ready to offer a large reward for its return.
And I wish you would. I happen to be more than usually in the need of money right now.
Well, there's no good offering a reward now that it's found.
I think that most rude of you. Though now that I look at the writing inside, I find that it's not your cigarette case after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen it with me 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a rule about what one should and shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on what you shouldn't read.
I am aware, and I don't want to discuss modern culture with you. I don't want to discuss anything that sounds important, unless other people are listening. Simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this cigarette case was a present from someone named Cecily. And you said yourself, you don't know anybody named Cecily.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Please, give me back my cigarette case.
Well, why does she call herself Little if she is your aunt?
From little Cecily, with her fondest love.
Come, old boy, you must explain that at once.
My dear fellow, why on earth does it matter? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are small. You seem to think that every aunt ought to be like yours. That is so silly. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
But why does your small aunt Cecily call you her uncle?
From little Cecily, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack.
There is no problem, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. Why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I simply can't explain it. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me your name was Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. I've introduced you to people as Ernest. You look as though your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I've seen in my entire life. Why, it is perfectly absurd to say that your name isn't Ernest. It says Ernest on your business card. Here's one of them now. Mr. Ernest Worthing, the Albany. Now I'll keep this as proof. If you ever try to deny that your name is Ernest to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anybody else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not explain why your small Aunt Cecily calls you her uncle. Now, go on, and before you do, may I add that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I will reveal to you the meaning of that wonderful expression once you explain to me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Give me back my cigarette case first.
Fine. Now go on, and please, make it interesting.
My dear fellow, there is absolutely nothing interesting about my explanation at all. In fact, it is rather ordinary. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was little, unfortunately passed away recently, and in his will left me guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who calls me uncle from motives of respect and could not possibly appreciate, lives in my manor in the country under the charge of her governess, Miss Prison.
And where is this manor in the country?
That does not matter. You are not going to be invited.
I figured as much. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town, but Jack in the country?
You fellow, I don't know if you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And since a high moral tone can hardly be said to produce health or happiness, in order to get up to town and do whatever I like, I always have to pretend that I have a younger brother named Ernest who lives in Albany and gets into the most dreadful of scrapes. That is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it was, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
Well, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing.
You're not very good at literary criticism, Ernest. Jack, don't try it. Leave it to the people who haven't been to university. They do it so well in the newspapers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was right to call you a Bunburyist, and perhaps the most advanced Bunburyist I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a younger brother named Ernest, so that you may run up to town whenever you like and do whatever you like. In a similar way, I have invented a permanently ill friend named Bunbury, so that I may go to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is the perfect excuse. For instance, if it wasn't for Bunbury's terribly poor health, we wouldn't be able to have dinner at Willis's tonight, for I've been dining with my Aunt Augusta for nearly a week.
But I haven't asked you anywhere with me tonight.
Yes, and I think that most rude of you. Nothing annoys me so much as not receiving invitations to places.
Better much dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing that. For starters, I was there on Monday, and once a week it's quite enough to eat dinner with your family. In the second place, whenever I do eat there, I am always treated as a member of the family, made to sit wherever Aunt Augusta chooses. And I know exactly who she will place me beside. She will seat me next to Lady Mary, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That is not pleasant at all. Indeed, it is not even right. And that sort of thing, I am afraid to say, is dangerously on the rise nowadays. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is scandalous. It looks so bad. It's essentially washing clean underwear in public. Besides, now that I know you're a Bunburyist, naturally I want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn agrees to marry me, I'm going to kill my younger brother. In fact, I think I'll get rid of him anyways. Cecily seems a little too interested in him. It is rather concerning. So I'm going to kill Ernest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with your Mr. permanently ill friend with a stupid name.
Nothing will force me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me highly problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. Any man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very hard time getting away from marriage.
Nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolyn, and she is the only girl I would ever want to marry, I certainly won't want to get away from marriage.
Then she will. You don't seem to understand that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is not.
For heaven's sake, don't be so cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's so much competition. Ha! That must be Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn. Only relatives, or landlords, ever ring in such an irritating manner. Now, if I can get her out of the way for, say, 10 minutes so you can propose, will you go to dinner with me at Willis's tonight?
I suppose if you really want me to.
Yes, but only if you're serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about eating. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Augusta Bracknell and Miss Gwendolyn Fairfax.
Good afternoon, Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
Feeling well and being well are not the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Cousin Gwendolyn, you're looking quite smart.
I'm always smart, aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You're absolutely perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for positive development. And I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we're a little late, Algernon, but I had to visit dear Lady Hartbury. I have not visited her since the death of her poor husband. In my entire life, I have never seen a woman so altered, so changed in appearance. She looks nearly 20 years younger. And now, I'll have that cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come and sit here with me?
Thanks, Mama, but I'm perfectly comfortable where I am.
Lane, where are the cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
Will do, Lane.
Thank you, sir.
No cucumbers, Aunt Augusta! Not even for ready money!
It doesn't really matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Hartbury, who seems to be living entirely for pleasure now. Thank you. I have quite a treat to you tonight, Algernon. I am going to sit you beside Lady Mary. She is such a nice woman, and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I will not have the pleasure of dining with you tonight.
Why not? Your absence would ruin my seating arrangements. My husband would have to eat dinner upstairs. Fortunately, he's quite accustomed to that.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I've just received a telegram saying that my poor friend Bunbury has fallen gravely ill again. They seem to think I should go visit him.
That is very strange. Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is dreadfully sick.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it was time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he is going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is ridiculous. I don't approve of this modern-day sympathy with the sick. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to my poor husband, but he never seems to take much notice. Please tell Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to get sick anymore, for I need you to arrange my music for Saturday's party. It is the last party of the season, and I want music that will inspire conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everyone has said practically whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I will have a word with Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can promise you that by Saturday he will be feeling much better. As far as the music is concerned, that is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't talk. But if one plays bad music, people won't listen. I'm sure we can go over all of it if you would join me in the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very kind of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful. after a few of my changes. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think they're improper, and either act shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds like a perfectly respectable language, and I believe it is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
In a moment, Mamma.
Charming weather we've been having, Miss Fairfax.
Please, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I often have to speak to her about.
Gwendolyn, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have met since I met you.
Yes, I'm well aware of the fact. And I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more obvious. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more fashionable monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I'm told. And my ideal has always been to love someone by the name of Ernest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest, do you?
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is, but suppose it was something else. Do you mean to say that you couldn't love me then?
Ah, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And, like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference to the actual facts of real life.
Really, Gwendolyn, I must say, I don't care much for the name of Ernest at all. I don't think it suits me.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Really, Gwendolyn, I must say there are plenty of other much nicer names. Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack. No. There's very little music in the name Jack. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were horrifyingly boring. I pity any woman married to a man named Jack. She would probably never be allowed to the pleasure of a single moment's peace. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I must change my name. I mean, we must get married at once. There is no time to lose.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, yes, surely. You know that I am in love with you, and you have led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not absolutely indifferent towards me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has hardly been touched upon.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling Ernest. It took you so long. I'm afraid you have a very little experience in how to propose.
My own one. Never loved anyone but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my friends tell me so. What wonderful eyes you have, Ernest. They're quite lovely. I hope you will always look at me just like that especially when there are other people watching.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mama, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should help knit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come to a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant. It is hardly a thing that she arranges for herself. And now, I have a few questions for you, Mr. Worthing. While I make these inquiries, that you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage!
Yes, Mama.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell, but I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible bachelors. However, I am quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what an affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I spoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many lazy men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. Now, I've always had the idea that a man who desires to be married should know absolutely everything, or nothing at all. Which do you know?
I know absolutely nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural stupidity. Stupidity is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole idea of modern education is a complete waste of time. Fortunately, in England, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or investments?
Investments, mostly.
That is satisfactory. During the duties expected of one during one's lifetime, and the duties exacted of one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from holding it. That's all that can be said about land.
I do have a country house with some land attached to it. Of course, I don't depend on that for my real income. As far as I can tell, the poachers are the only people that make any profit off of it.
A country house, and how many bedrooms? Well, that can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a humble, unspoiled nature like my Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to live in the country.
Well, I own a townhouse in Belgrave Square, but it is rented to the year by Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back anytime I like within 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham, I don't know her.
Oh, she is a lady considerably advanced in years. She doesn't go out much, I'm afraid.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee for respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
Oh, the unfashionable side. I knew there was something wrong with you. However, that can soon change.
The fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I really have none. I am a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. Now to unimportant questions. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents, Lady Bracknell.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, is a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical into the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I don't really know, Lady Bracknell. I told you that I had lost my parents, but it would be nearer to the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found!
I was found by the late Mr. Thomas Curry, a kind and charitable old gentleman who found me and gave me the last name accordingly, because he happened to have a first-class ticket forwarding a seaside resort in Sussex.
And where did this charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket to this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was found in a handbag. A somewhat large, ordinary handbag. Perfectly ordinary one, in fact.
And where did this Mr. Thomas Cardew find this ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line does not matter, Mr. Worthing. I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag displays a contempt for the common decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And do you know what that unfortunate movement led to? As to the location in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station may conceal a social indiscretion. Indeed, has been used for that purpose before now, but it could hardly be regarded as a basis for a recognized position in our good society.
May I ask you, then, what you would want me to do? I hardly say I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relatives as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can show you the cloak, I can show you the handbag at any time. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me? Sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good day, Mr. Worthing!
Good day! Algy, don't you quit at you! What an idiot you are!
Didn't go too well? Did Gwendolyn refuse you? I know it's a way she has. She's always refusing people. I think it most rude of her.
Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are married. Her mother, on the other hand, is utterly unbearable. I have never met such a gorgon. I'm not exactly sure what a gorgon is, but I'm quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. At any rate, she is a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I'm sorry, Algy, I shouldn't speak this way of your relatives in front of you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relatives abused. It's the only reason I put up with them at all. My relatives are simply a tedious pack of people, without the smallest knowledge of how to live, nor the slightest indication of when to die.
That's nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue with you on the matter. You always love to argue about things.
That is exactly what things are originally made for.
My word, if I thought that way, I'd shoot myself. You don't seem to think that Gwendolyn has any chance of becoming like her mother in about, 150 years or so, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in good society should be.
I am so sick of cleverness. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people nowadays. Cleverness has become an absolute public menace. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We do.
Really? I would love to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? Oh, about the clever people, of course.
What fools!
By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about you being Ernest in town, but Jack in the country?
Of course not. The truth is not something that one works out to a sweet, refined girl like Gwendolyn. What extraordinary ideas about the way to behave toward a woman you have.
The only way to behave towards a woman is to romance her if she's pretty and find someone else if she's not.
That's nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, that won't matter. By the end of the week, I'll have gotten rid of him. I'll say he died of a sudden attack of extreme anger. Lots of people die from sudden attacks of extreme anger, don't they?
Yes, but it's the sort of thing that runs in the family. You'd much be better off saying he died of a severe chill.
And you are sure a severe chill doesn't run in the family?
Of course it doesn't.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest, carried off and perished due to a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said Cecily was a little too interested in your brother.
Oh, Cecily is not some silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She has a capital appetite, loves to go on long walks, and never pays any attention to her German lessons.
I think I would rather like to meet Cecily.
I'll make sure you never do. She's excessively pretty, and only 18.
Does Gwendolyn know you live with an excessively pretty ward who is only 18?
Of course not. But I'm sure that once Gwendolyn and Cecily meet, they will become extremely good friends. I bet within the hour they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only call each other sister when they've called each other a number of other things first. Now, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we must really get going. Did you know that it is nearly 7?
Oh, it is always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What should we do after dinner? Might we go to a theater?
No, I can't stand listening.
Well, then let us go to a club.
No, I can't stand talking.
Well, might we walk to the gallery around 10?
No, I can't stand to look at things. It's so silly.
What on earth should we do?
Nothing.
It is awfully hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind hard work when there is no definite object of any kind.
Miss Gwendolyn Fairfax.
Cousin Gwendolyn, what are you doing back here?
Algie, kindly turn around. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Gwendolyn, really, I don't think I can allow this.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that yet.
Gwendolyn.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression of Mama's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any attention to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is dying out quickly. Whatever influence I ever had over Mama, I lost at the ripe age of 3. However, although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do will alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The tragic story of your origins, as related to me by Ma with rather unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper heartstrings of my nature. Your name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you utterly incomprehensible to me. I have your address in town. But what is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Bolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose? It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Until Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
Thanks. I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me use your carriage, will you not?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane?
Wonderful, sir. The perfect remedy to a long day. I myself never go without drinking at least a bottle before bed.
How utterly brilliant. Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunbury.
In another far-off city? Or in the country as customary?
In the country. And I don't think I'll be back until Monday. Pack up my smoking jacket, my dress shirts, and all of the Bunbury suits.
Along with all 20 cases of luggage?
Of course. Tomorrow, Lane, I hope will be a good day.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you are the perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There is a sweet, refined girl. The only girl I would ever want to marry. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just a little worried about poor Bunbury is all.
You are not careful. Your friend Bunbury will get you into some serious trouble one day.
Oh, I love trouble. It's the only thing that's never serious.
That's nonsense, Algie. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Quite unattractive after my German lesson. You know how anxious your uncle is, and you should improve yourself in every way. You lay particular stress on your German to be staying from town. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he's leaving for town. Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious, I think he must be ill. Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity and demeanor is especially commendable in one's young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility. I suppose that's why he often looks bored when we're together. Cicely! I am surprised with you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle amusement and pleasure are out of place in his conversation. You must remember, he's constantly anxious about that foolish young man. His brother Ernest.
I wish Uncle Jack would let his brother come down here sometimes. We might have good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know, German and genealogy and all the things that influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce an effect on a man that is, according to his own brother, horrifyingly corrupt. Indeed, I'm not sure that I would desire to face him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap. Cicely, you must put away your diary. I don't understand why you keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I would probably forget all about them.
It is well known that memory is a diary of life. To your word, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
Good morning. How are you all on this fine day? Miss Prism, I trust you are well.
Actually, Miss Prism has just been complaining of a headache. I think it would do her much good to have a stroll with you, Dr. Chasuble.
But Cicely, I have not mentioned anything of a headache.
No, Miss Prism, but I felt instinctively that you did have a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not on my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you're not inattentive.
I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. If I were fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor is drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
No, we are not expecting him until Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually spends his Sundays in London. He's not one of those incorrigibles whose sole purpose in life is enjoyment. Unlike his unfortunate brother, Ernest. Professor Vigeria and her pupil any longer.
Juria, my name is Letitia, Doctor.
Classical error! No doubt. Shall I see you both in the evening then?
Actually, if it wouldn't trouble you, Doctor, I find I do have a headache after all, and I'll walk my two good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure.
Delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the Rebellion may admit, I find it is somewhat too sensational. Even these political problems have their dramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, and horrid German!
Miss Carter, I apologize for the untimely disturbance, but Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He's brought his luggage with him, or more accurately, his entire wardrobe.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, the Albany West. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you let him know Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss, he seemed very disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He was eager to speak with you privately for a moment.
Well, in that case, ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come down here. Oh, I've never met a wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he'll look just like everyone else.
No need to be afraid, miss. Unfortunately, he resembled that typical gentleman from London.
Oh, he was dashing, of a charming disposition, and had an air of wealth about him.
No, he was extraordinarily pompous.
How marvelous! I must meet with him at once. I suppose we had better make arrangements with the housekeeper about getting a room prepared for his stay.
By the way, miss, in the meantime, I'll leave the two of you to become acquainted. Oh, but do be careful. Your uncle would be devastated if his brother gained any sort of influence over you.
Good day. I would ask your name, but your reputation and your beauty. You're the darling, little Cecily.
You were under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am little Cecily, and you, I can see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother Ernest. His wicked brother Ernest.
Oh, but I'm not really wicked at all, Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you're not, then you've certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you haven't been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked but being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, well, of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention it, I've been very bad in my own small way.
I'm not sure you should be so proud of that, though I am sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much more pleasant being here with you.
I don't understand why you're here at all. Uncle Jack doesn't get back until Monday afternoon.
And that is a great shame. I must leave first thing Monday morning. I have a very important business meeting that I am eager to miss.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement, if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life, but still a better think you wait until Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your immigration.
Oh, my what?
About your immigration. He's gone out to buy your new outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you'll be requiring neckties. Uncle Jack's sending you to Australia.
Australia? Oh, I'd rather die.
Well, he did say at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh, well, the accounts I've heard of Australia and of the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, sweet Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not. That is why I would like to ask you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, darling Cecily.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind me reforming myself this afternoon?
It's rather impractical of you, but I think you should try.
I will. In fact, I feel a little better already.
Oh, well, you're looking a little worse.
That is
One requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Yes, but might you pin a flower to my button first? I never have an appetite unless I look my very best.
A lavender?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cecily.
I don't think it right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never said such things to me.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the most beautiful girl I've seen in my entire life.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
They're a snare that every sensible man would love to be caught in.
I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You're much too alone, dear doctor. You should get married. I despise your humanity, I can understand. But a despiser of women should never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The belief as well as the practice of the early church was distinctly against marriage.
It is obviously the reason why the early church has not lasted up to the present day. Do you not realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man makes himself a permanently public temptation? Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads many people astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often, I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of a woman. Maturity can always be depended on. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing!
This is indeed a surprise. We were not expecting you until Monday afternoon.
Returned sooner than expected. You were well.
Of course, but dear Mr. Worthing, what is the occasion for such attire? I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
A more shameful death to extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead!
Your brother Ernest is dead?
Quite dead?
What a lesson for him. I hope we shall learn from it.
Mr. Worthing! I offer you my sincerest condolences. You have at least the consolation knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers. Were you with him at the end?
No. He died abroad in Paris. I got a telegram from the manager of the Grand Hotel last night.
And what was the cause of death?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity! Here is Prism. Charity! Nobody is perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to droughts. Will the burial take place here?
No. He seemed to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? But you know who was in Paris, Jack.
Who was in Paris, Chauncey?
Never mind that. In any case, I fear this hardly points to a very serious state of mind at the end. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic affliction in my homily this Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or, as in the present case, distressing. Oh, I've preached it at harvest celebrations, baptisms, confirmations, on days of humiliation, and on festival days. The last time I delivered was at the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for Prevention of Discontent among the upper classes. The bishop, who was present, was much struck by some of the analogies that I drew.
Ah! That's right. You mentioned baptisms. Dr. Chapel, I suppose you know how to perform a baptism.
Why, of course,
Of course, you continue to baptize and rename children to this very day, don't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I've often spoken to poorer classes on the subject.
But is there any particular infant you're interested in, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not really an infant, dear doctor. No. I would like to be baptized myself this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But Mr. Worthing, haven't you been baptized already?
I have no recollection about it.
But have you any great doubts on the subject?
I certainly intended to have, although I don't know if the whole thing would bother you in any way, or do you think I'm a little too old now?
Not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need not worry. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you wish to be baptized?
At around 5 would do.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A pair of twins was born recently in one of the outlying cottages on your estate.
Oh, but I cannot be baptized alongside babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. Now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I merely beg you not to be too bowed down by grief. It would seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack? Uncle Jack! How pleased I am to see you back, but what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily! Where have you been?
Oh, what is the matter, Uncle Jack? You do look happy. You look as if you've had a toothache. I have got just a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Brother Ernest. He arrived here about half an hour ago.
What nonsense. I haven't run a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he's still your brother. I will go inside and tell him to come out here at once. And you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
What strange and joyful tidings!
After we all had accepted his loss, his sudden return seems to me rather distressing.
My brother in the dining room. I don't know what to make of it. I think it's perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother Jack! I have come down from town to tell you that I am heartily sorry for all the wrongdoings I have committed, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you would refuse your own brother's hand?
Nothing will make me take his hand. I think his coming down here disgraceful. Perfectly well. Why?
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor sick friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. And surely there's much good in one who is so kind and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by the bed of the ill.
Oh, he's been talking to you about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury. I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or anything else. It is enough to drive one to insanity.
Though I admit that the faults were all on my side, I must say that I find Brother Jack's coldness to me rather painful. I expected a warmer welcome, especially considering it's the first time I have been here.
Uncle Jack, if you do not shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
Fine. But this is the last time I shall ever do it.
How pleasant to see so perfect a reconciliation. I think we might leave these 2 brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us. Certainly, Miss Prism. My task of reconciliation is over.
You've done a beautiful thing today, dear child.
Algernon, you young scoundrel, you've got to leave at once. I don't allow any Bunbury in here.
Mr. Worthing, I have spoken to the housekeeper and made arrangements for your brother's stay. I put his luggage in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that's all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I've put in the room next to your own. I've unpacked all 20 cases and placed them in the wardrobe.
I am afraid that I cannot stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order a carriage at once. Ernest has just been called back to town.
Very well, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack! I have not been called back to town at all!
Yes, you have.
Well, I haven't heard anyone call me.
Duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with any of my pleasures.
I can certainly understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are to talk to Cecily like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like what you're wearing. Why on earth don't you go up and change? You look perfectly ridiculous. It is absurd to be dressed in deep mourning for a man who is actually spending an entire week with you in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are certainly not staying with me as a guest or anything else. Got to leave by the 4 o'clock train.
I certainly won't leave so long as you are in mourning. That would be most rude. If I were in mourning, you would stay by my side. I would think it most rude if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes. Well, if you don't take too long. I've never seen someone take so long to get dressed with such little result.
Well, that's certainly better than being always overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by always being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. You have got to catch the 4 o'clock train, and I wish you a lovely journey back to town. This funfair has been a complete failure for you.
I think it has been my greatest success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go, and make arrangements for another bunbird. Ah, there she is now.
I came back to water the roses, but where's Uncle Jack?
He's gone to order a carriage for me, Cecily. He's sending me away.
Then we must part.
I am afraid so. And a very painful parting it is, too.
It's always painful parting for people whom one has known for a very brief time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
The carriage awaits, sir.
It can wait, Marion, for 5 minutes.
Of course, miss.
Cecily, I hope I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you'll allow me, I will copy your words into my diary.
You keep a diary? I'd give anything to have a look. May I?
No. You see, it is simply a girl's private record of her own thoughts, and definitely meant to be published. When it appears in novel form, I hope you will order a copy. But please, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in writing the praises of others. I have reached absolute perfection. Go on. I am quite ready for more. Don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first dared to gaze upon your wild and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
The carriage is at the door, sir.
Tell her to come back next week, at the same hour.
Very well, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anybody in this whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. Will you marry me?
Silly boy, of course! Why, we've been engaged for the past 3 months.
For the past 3 months?
Yes. It'll be exactly
But how exactly did we become engaged?
Well, when dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have become the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. I dare say it was foolish of me that I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I, determined to end the matter one way or another, and after a long struggle with myself, accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this little bangle with the true lover's knot on it, and promised you always to wear.
Did I get this for you? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you have wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters! But, my, oh dear sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You'd hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well I was forced to write your letters for you. I always wrote 3 times a week, and sometimes more often.
You will let me read them, won't you?
I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 that you wrote me after I had broken off the engagement are so beautiful, and so badly spelled I can hardly read them without crying.
Well, was our engagement ever actually broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the end of it if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues to be charming.
Oh, why on earth did you break it off? I mean, what had I done? I had done nothing at all. Cecily, I am very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
Well, it would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
Dear romantic boy!
You'll never break off our engagement again?
I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, there is the question of your name.
My name?
You mustn't laugh at me, darling, but it's always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband isn't called Ernest.
But, my dear sweet Cecily, do you mean to say that you
Couldn't love me if I had to say another name?
But what name?
Any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name Algernon.
But really, my sweet, dear, pretty, little, loving, little darling, I really don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. I mean, it's not a bad name at all. Rather, it's an aristocratic name. You know, half the gentlemen who file for bankruptcy nowadays are named Algernon. But really, Cecily, if I was to be named Algie, wouldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear that I would not be able to give you my undivided.
Right! Your rector here is, I suppose, practicing all rites and ceremonies of the church.
Oh yes, Dr. Childsville is a most educated man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine just how much he knows.
Then I must see Dr. Childsville at once. A most important baptism on most important business. I shan't be gone for longer than half an hour.
Well, considering that we've been engaged since February the 14th, and that I only just met you today for the first time, I feel it rather cruelly for you to leave me as long as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I will be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like him so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
Pardon me, miss, but Miss Gwendolyn Fairfax was just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Actually, he was seen in the general direction of the church just some time ago.
Try ask her to come down here. Mr. Worthing will surely return. Oh, and do bring some tea.
Very well, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose she's one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropy in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropy. I think it's so forward of them.
Miss Gwendolyn Fairfax.
Good evening! Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew? What a very sweet name. Something tells me that we are going to be great friends. I already like you more than I can say. And my first impressions on people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we've only known each other for such a short time. Please, sit down.
Thank you. Perhaps this might be a favorable time for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of father, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, father, I'm glad to say, is almost entirely unknown. And I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper place for the man. Certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully feminine, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has raised me to be extremely short-sighted. It is a part of her system. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced age, resides here also?
I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. It is strange. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. However, the news inspires within me feelings of mixed light. I am very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I met you. But I am bound to state that now that I know you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish you were, well, quite a bit older than you appear to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak quite honestly...
Please do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be honest.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 45 and more than unusually ugly for your age. But Ernest has a strong, upright character. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the physical influence of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, provides me with my most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite boring.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn, but did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, well, it's not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian, it's his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
Well, I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that makes sense. And now that I think of it, I've never heard of any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his wife.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should keep it a secret from you. Our little county newspapers will sure to chronicle the facts next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily! It appears there has been some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear on Saturday in the Morning Post at the latest.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry if it is of any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
Well, it would distress me more than I can tell you, dearest Gwendolyn, if it were to cause you any mental or physical anguish, but I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten into, I will not reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you! This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a shovel, I call it a shovel.
I'm glad to say that I've never seen a shovel. It is obvious that our social spheres have been vastly different.
Shall I lay the tea here, as usual?
Yes, as usual.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see about 5 counties.
5 counties. I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that's why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as unengaged bachelors are in London.
Personally, I cannot manage to understand how anybody exists in the country. If anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it. It's almost an epidemic amongst them, I've been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Yes, please. Detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Would you like cake, or do you prefer bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax. disappointed though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter. You have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you go too far. To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the manipulations of another girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go. From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful, and I am never wrong in such matters. My first impressions on people are invariably right. It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar nature to make in the neighborhood. Ernest! My own Ernest!
Gwendolyn.
A moment! May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
Cecily. Of course not. Who could have such a silly idea in your pretty little head?
I thought so. Thank you. You may. I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. That gentleman is my guardian, Mr. Jack Worthing. I beg your pardon. This is Uncle Jack. Jack! Ow! Here is Ernest.
My love!
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
Which young? Good heavens! Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn! I mean, to Gwendolyn.
Oh, of course not! Who could have put such an idea in your pretty little head?
Thought so. Thank you. I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you at present is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief. Algernon Moncrief? Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really Jack?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name most certainly is Jack. It has been Jack for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on the both of us. My poor, wounded Cecily, my sweet Gwendolyn. You will call me sister, will you not? There is just one thing I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian. An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there's just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother, Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to Brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to know where he is in the present moment.
Gwendolyn. Cecily. It is very hard for me to be forced to speak the truth. It's the first time I've ever had to do so, and I'm rather inexperienced. However, I will tell you that I have no brother, that I have never had a brother, and I have no intention of in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Have you never had a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone. It is not a very pleasant state for a girl to suddenly find herself in. Now is it? Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there. No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
So this ghastly state of things is what you call fun burying, I suppose.
Yes! And what a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is! Perhaps the most wonderful Bunbury I have had in my life!
You have no right to Bunbury here.
Oh, that is absurd! One has a right to Bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist, good heavens!
Well, one must be serious about something if they want to retain any sort of happiness in life. I happen to be serious about Bunbury. What's you are serious about? I haven't the slightest idea. About everything, I suppose. You have an absolutely trivial nature.
The only small satisfaction I can gain from this whole wretched business is that your friend Bunbury has quite exploded. You certainly won't be able to run up to the country quite so often as you used to, and a very good thing too.
Your brother's looking a little off color, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to run up to town as often as your wicked custom was. Not a bad thing.
As for your conduct towards Cecily, I must say that your liking for a sweet, innocent young girl like that is quite inexcusable. Say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible excuse for your deception of a brilliant, thoroughly experienced young lady like Gwendolyn, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I want to be married to Gwendolyn. That is all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of you and Cecily becoming engaged.
Well, Jack, I don't think there's much likelihood of you and Gwendolyn being united.
That's no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that. And then again, only at dinner parties.
How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble? I can't make out. You're perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins calmly. It's the only right way to eat them.
I say it's perfectly heartless or eating them at all under the circumstances.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. Right now, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that's no reason why you should do all in that greedy way.
I wish you would have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heaven, I suppose a man makes his own muffins in his own garden.
But you just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless for you under the circumstances. That is a completely different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Oh, gee, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go before dinner. I never go without my dinner. No one does except vegetarians and poor people. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be baptized at 5:45 under the new name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. Just this morning, I made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be baptized, and naturally I will take the name of Ernest. We can't both be baptized Ernest. It would be absurd. Besides, I have perfect right to be baptized with my life. There's no evidence to suggest I ever have been baptized, and I think it extremely improbable that I ever was. It is entirely different in your case. You have been baptized already.
Yes, but I've not been baptized in a long time.
Yes, but you have been baptized. That is the important thing.
Exactly. So I know my body will survive. I must say, Jack, if you're not so quite certain about your being baptized, I think of it rather dangerous. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely acquainted to you nearly passed away this morning in Paris from a severe chill.
But you said a severe chill doesn't find a family.
Before it didn't. I know that, but now it does. Science is always making wonderful advancements in things.
That is nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins! I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left. I already told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Then why on earth do you allow it to be served up for your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality!
Algernon! I have already told you to go. Why don't you go? I don't want you here.
But I haven't quite finished my tea yet. there's still one muffin left.
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show that they have at least some sense of shame left.
They've been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
I haven't got a cough.
Very well. In that case, I shall. They're looking at us. What effrontery!
They're approaching. How very forward of them.
Let us maintain a dignified silence.
Certainly, it is the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
Most distasteful one.
But you will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing! There's just one question I have for you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I may meet you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, but only if you believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of this answer.
True. In matters of great importance, presentation, not honesty, is the important thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have the opportunity of coming up to town as often as possible to see me?
Can you doubt it, Gwendolyn?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. Now is not the moment for skepticism. Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. This seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I'm more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires some absolute train elevation.
Then, you think we should forgive them?
Yes! I mean, no!
True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake one simply cannot relinquish. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Are you prepared to give our answer?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insurmountable barrier. That is all.
Is that all? We were going to be baptized this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible, terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you're willing to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk of equality of the sexes, where questions of truth and loyalty are concerned. Men are infinitely beyond us. Darling!
Darling.
A certain Lady Bracknell arrived.
Good heavens!
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, or physical weakness in the old. Aware that she was making her way to the country today, I followed my daughter at once by her luggage train. Her father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending an unusually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the permanent influence of income on thought. I do not plan on telling him the truth. Indeed, I have never told him the truth. I would consider it improper. But you must understand that all communications between between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now regards, Algernon.
Yes?
May I ask if it is in this house that your ill friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Bunbury? No, Bunbury is not here right now. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death appears extremely sudden.
Oh, well, I killed Bunbury Mr. Bunbury died this afternoon of natural causes.
What did he die of?
Bunbury, he quite exploded!
Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear aunt, Mr. Bunbury was found out. That is, the doctors found out that he could not live. So he died.
I seem to have had great confidence in the opinion of his doctors. I'm glad, however, he has made up his mind, at last, for a definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we are finally rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthy? Mr. Worthy? Who is that young person who my nephew Algernon's hand is holding in a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Mrs. Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I am engaged to marry Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there's anything peculiarly exciting in the air in this part of the country, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me to be considerably above the proper average the statistics have laid down. I think some inquiry on my part would not be out of the question. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected to any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea there were any families or persons whose origins were train stations.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Gervais Park and Surrey.
That sounds satisfactory. 3 addresses always inspires confidence. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. Open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in publication.
Miss Cardew's family lawyers are widely renowned. Surely you've heard of Markaby.
Markaby, and Markaby, a firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told that one of the Mr. Markabys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. You will also be glad to hear that I have preserved in my possession certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, vaccination, confirmation, registration, whooping cough, and the measles, the German and English variety.
A life crowded with incidents. Though I see somewhat too exciting for that of a young girl, I myself am not in favour of premature experiences. Gwendolyn, the time has come for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. Mr. Brown, I had better ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, only about £140,000 or so. That is all, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to see you.
1 moment, Mr. Worthing! £140,000! Miss Cardew seems to me to be a most attractive young lady. Now that I look at her, few girls of the solid qualities. Any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of services. Come over here, dear. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvelous effect in a brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lancing, and in 3 months her own husband did not know her.
In 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn around, sweet girl. No, not that far. The side view is what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The chin, a little high, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is formed. They all look very high just at present. Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
There are distinct social possibilities in this Carjew's profile.
Cecily is the prettiest, sweetest girl I've ever known. And I don't care 2 pence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear girl, of course you know, Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed for 1 moment of allowing that to get in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Dear Cecily, you may now address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had take place quite soon. I'm not in favour of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
Excuse me for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but I am Cecily Durden, and Cecily cannot marry without my consent. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say ostentatiously, eligible young man. He has nothing, but looks everything. What more can one desire?
It pains me very much to speak frankly about your own nephew, Lady Bracknell. But the fact is, I do not approve of his moral character at all. I suspect him of being a liar.
A liar? Algernon? Impossible. He attended Oxford University.
I feel there can be no possible doubt on the matter. Just this morning, in my temporary absence in London, he entered my house under the false pretense of being my brother. Under a false name, he drank, as I've just been informed by my butler, my entire bottle of 1889 Pierre Jouet wine that I was specifically reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he managed in the course of an afternoon in alienating the affections of my ward. He stayed for tea and went on to devour every single muffin. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly well aware that I have no brother, that I would never have a brother, and I have no intention of having one in the future.
After careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision remains unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come over here, sweet girl. How old are you, dear?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit 22 when I go to evening parties.
You are perfectly right to do so. Indeed, no woman should ever be accurate about her age. So, calculated. 18, but it's getting to 22 at evening parties. Well, it will not be long before you are of age, and free from any restraints. So I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Excuse me for interrupting you again, Lady Bracknell, but I feel it is only fair to tell you that according to the terms of Miss Curry's grandfather's will, Cecily does not legally come of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have, of their own free choice, remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton, for example, to my own knowledge, has been 35 ever since she turned 40, which was many years ago. So I see no reason why our dear Cecily would not still be more attractive at the age you propose than she is already at present. There will also be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, couldn't you wait for me until I turn 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. No, I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
And what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say shows a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my lord.
You must be aware that what you propose is entirely out of the question.
And I guess a passionate celibacy is all any of us can look forward to.
That's not the destiny I propose for Gwendolyn! Algernon, of course, can decide for himself. Come, dear, we have missed 5, if not 6 trains.
To miss any more might expose us to the no classes.
Everything is quite ready for the baptisms.
Baptism? Says that not premature!
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and sacrilegious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if you learned that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand then there are to be no baptisms at all this afternoon?
I don't think that as things are right now, they give much value to either of our options.
I'm grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They smell of the heretical views of the Anabaptists. Views which I've completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished homilies. However, as your present mood appears to be one strangely secular, I will take my leave to the church. Indeed, I have just been informed that for the past hour and a half, Mrs. Prism has been waiting for me there.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I am on my way to join her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove to be of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism remotely connected to education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
She is
Miss Prism has been for the last 4 years Miss Curry's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is here.
I was told you expected me, dear Frederick. I've been waiting for you there for the past hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here! Prism! Prism! Where is that baby? 28 years ago. You, Prism, left Lord Bracknell's house in charge of a stroller that contained a baby boy. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the stroller was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater, containing nothing but a romance novel. Prism, when is that, baby?
Lady Bracknell, I am ashamed that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in the stroller. I also had with me a somewhat old handbag, which I plan to return a recently completed novel. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I mistook the novel for the child. Placing the novel in the stroller and the baby in the handbag.
Where did you put the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Prism, this is a matter of great importance to me. I demand to know where you placed the handbag in the infant.
In the cloakroom in one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria. Right in line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. When will you awake me?
If you do not take too long, I will wait for you here all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chaucerpont. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position in society, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered a thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a most emotional nature.
The noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if you were having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
Well, it has stopped now.
I wish you would arrive at some conclusion.
This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag? Examine it carefully. The happiness of more than one lifetime depends upon your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes! Here in the locker, my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had them placed there. This bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It's been a great inconvenience being without it all.
Miss Prism, more restored to you than that handbag, for I was the infant you placed within it. You? Yes, mother!
Oh, Mr. Whitton! I'm unmarried!
Oh, thank goodness. Unmarried? I do not deny it. That is a serious blow. However, who has the right to cast a stone against one that has suffered? If repentance not wipe out an act of folly, why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the woman who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to see what you do. Do you mind kindly informing me of who I am?
I'm afraid the news I have to give you, Mr. Worthing, will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Miss Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Then I have a brother after all. I always said I had a brother. Destiny, how could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, meet my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you don't. You've got to start treating me with more respect in the future. You would never behave to me like a brother in all your life.
Well, not until today. I admit, though, I was out of practice.
My own one!
else.
Heavens, I had quite forgotten about that. Your opinion on the subject of my name cannot be reversed, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections. Whatever noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
The subject better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, at the time this prism left me in the handbag, had I been baptized already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including baptism, has been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was baptized. It is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know your worst.
Being the eldest, you were naturally named after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's name?
I cannot at present moment recall what the general's name was. He had one, no doubt. He was eccentric, but only in late years, and that was the result of the climate, marriage, indigestion, and other things of that vile nature.
Algie, can't you recall what our father's name was?
I'm afraid we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army list of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta.
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his married life. But I suppose his name would appear on any military record.
The army list of the last 40 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. General Mauhem, Maxwell, oh, what doubts names it had. Markley, Migsby, Mobbs, McCree, Lieutenant 1840, Captain Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel General, Christian names, Ernest, Jack. I always told you when my name was Ernest. It is Ernest. Naturally, it is Ernest after all.
Yes, I remember now the general was called Ernest. Though I had a particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest! My own Ernest! I felt it from the first that you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a very hard thing for a man to suddenly find out that all his life has been speaking nothing but the truth. Will you forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one, Cecily.
At last?
Gwendolyn.
At last.
Nigeria. Big Tisha.
My dear nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I now realize for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
performing this production when our drama teacher retired, and ever since then she has been up with me very late at night, organizing costumes, organizing the script, helping with modifications, or helping with really any stupid ideas that we were sorting out. So thank you very much, Miss Kastamo.
All right, I would like to say a few words about Mr. Matt Perkins. Hold on, I wrote down some notes. When I was in grade 9, my drama teacher told me to quit drama. Mr. Perkins hasn't done that, so he's a step up in my book. What is there to say about Mr. Perkins? Well, much like Tame Impala, Mr. Matthew Joseph Perkins is just one guy. However, unlike the former, Mr. Perkins has been instrumental in the direction of this play. I've known him for a number of years, so when I learned that he would be aiding in our production, I was near overjoyed. Mr. Perkins has been an amazing part of the play, be it directing, getting props, and sacrificing nearly years of his life putting up with us. And I'm thankful more than words can say for his contributions. Make sure to stream his new single, People Please.
She brings such a joyful, incredible presence to the stage, and it was an honor working with her.
Finally, I'd like to call Mr. Pratt. Well, Mr. Our very own head of the drama department at STA has taken over the role with a burning passion. He has helped us with invaluable experience and given us creative ways to look at our lives and on how to act. Let's have a
And finally, I have some words to say about Stephanie Kastamo. Let's see, what do I have here? Stephanie Kastamo, my castmate, my co-president, and a lifelong friend of 5 years. When we received the terrible news that STA's resident drama teacher and play runner had unceremoniously retired, we thought any chance of a senior play production was out of the question. Not Steph. Purely of her own volition, she assembled a team of teachers, obtained and edited a script, and organized and advertised auditions. And she did this all completely by herself. Well, more or less. And this was all, before the play had actually started. She did this all while maintaining about probably a dozen other clubs, as well as the entirety of the student council. And, of course, her own grades. I think I speak for all of the grade 12s present, and everyone else, when I say that Stephanie has made our grad year so much better. Thank you, Steph, and for all that you've done. We got this from the water bottle in...